The San Francisco 49ers victorious in Week 1 on Monday Night Football against Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets.
It's Tiger time, and your wide receiver one might just be there for it.
Okay, Malik Willis is probably going to start for the Green Bay Packers in Week 2.
And the latest on Puka Nacua.
How will Jalen Lucas's injury impact Florida State's offense?
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The San Francisco 49ers victorious in Week 1 on Monday Night Football against Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Unbelievable news that Christian McCaffrey was inactive. Were the San Francisco 49ers playing a little funny business with that information, Croc? Because on the radio this week, especially John Lynch made it sound like, man, Christian McCaffrey is playing. Christian McCaffrey himself made it sound like Christian McCaffrey is playing. And I don't know if you caught this, Croc, but after the game, they asked Jordan Mason when he found out he was going to be starting, and he said, Friday.
Well, Friday was the day that Christian McCaffrey pulled himself out of practice.
Yeah.
So that was something that we didn't know. And if you listen to John Lynch prior to, Friday afternoon's practice, it was something that a lot of people weren't privileged to. I think the 49ers assumed, oh, yeah, Christian McCaffrey, Monday evening, he's going to be just fine. And you and I kind of talked about the Achilles, right? Like, that's the big part. The calf, whatever. But when he had said previously, oh, if there's a game this week, I could play in it. But then they tagged his calf injury with the Achilles. I'm like, I don't know if you're 100% going out there, and Achilles is not something that they want to play with. So the one positive out of this, I think Kyle Shanahan now takes a while for him to trust people. I think he might actually trust Jordan Mason. You notice he didn't trust anybody else, like Jordan Mason, Debo. You guys are the only ones getting carries. You have like 2 more active running backs on the bench, and it's like, no, you guys aren't touching the ball. Only people I trust. I think he trusts Jordan Mason a little bit more now.
A lot of people fired up in the chat about how Jordan Mason played, how Moody played, and I don't think it's going to be any surprise, Croc, that we give a game ball out. So I guess we can just start there with Jordan Mason getting our first game ball of the 2024 season. 150 yards, 147 yards, on the ground on 28 carries. And Isaac Guerrero got on the field for one play, and then they called a timeout because Kyle Shanahan didn't like how everybody was lined up. So it's not just the Christian McCaffrey thing. Whoever Kyle Shanahan's lead back is the back for the game. And Jordan,
we've been saying that since Elijah Mitchell's rookie year. Elijah Mitchell, he went into a game on primetime television with a broken knee, a broken ribs, broken finger, and Kyle ran the ball 27 times with him in a blowout. Like, it doesn't matter who the back is. Kyle wants whoever that lead back is, you are getting the rock.
Deebo Samuel, we got the return of the wide back in this one as well. And I don't know if that was a last-minute switch, knowing that Christian McCaffrey wasn't going to play, or if Deebo Samuel was going to be that featured in this matchup. He ended up carrying the ball 8 times and caught another 5 balls for 54 yards. Did Deebo Samuel in this one, kind of just short of breaking it. He did have that one touchdown, but was kind of just short of breaking a couple of runs and didn't really fully get going as good as he looked and as much as he touched the ball in this game. It was just all about Jordan Mason. Nobody else had more than 64 yards receiving or rushing, while Jordan Mason had 147 yards on a bell cow usage, 28 carries. So phenomenal stuff. Croc, you know me, I am not surprised that Jordan Mason was able to run the ball this well, because I believe that both Jordan Mason is talented and that Kyle Shanahan is really good at scheming up the run game, and that it's not like not having Christian McCaffrey, as good as he is, was going to mean that the 49ers weren't going to be able to run the ball. It was just going to be a few less other dynamic dimensions that Christian McCaffrey brings. We're not going to be a part of this football game. And it turned out in this one that the 49ers did not need it, running away from the New York Jets 32-19. Do the 49ers have just complete ownage on Aaron Rodgers, by the way?
Yeah, definitely. And he still had that like kind of smug look on his face at one point. And I was like, I gotcha. Shout to that. I want to go back to the running game for just a second with Jordan Mason and how well he ran the ball. But if you remember, if you recall, you and I did an episode ranking the most important 49er players. And while Christian McCaffrey has been very important to the offense, we did not name him or rank him the most important because we felt like if you take him out of the backfield and you plug somebody else in, Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, you will get really good production on the ground. And I think they proved that again. Again, that's not to say that CMC is not significant with all the different things he does. And I'm pretty sure with Kyle Shanahan, maybe he makes it a lot easier to call certain plays, do different things, have different type of matchups. But you're not going to just fall apart not having Christian McCaffrey out there. And I think Jordan Mason really proved that tonight.
Yeah, he runs hard. He's got vision. He's just a pure running back. He's really good. And for those of you who don't remember, we got to shout out the scouting staff on this one as well. If you don't remember the story about Jordan Mason, he was an undrafted running back a couple of years ago out of Georgia Tech. And he was a starter early on in his career at Georgia Tech. And then they got this big-time recruit. In fact, they got a recruit at Georgia Tech at running back who was the biggest recruit they've ever gotten in the history of the Georgia Tech program. I mean, we're talking about a program that had Calvin Johnson, right? And this guy was a bigger recruit than even him when he showed up on campus, and he took Jordan Mason's starting job away from him. That guy is none other than former top 15 draft pick Jahmyr Gibbs. And then after Jordan Mason leaves, then Jahmyr Gibbs transfers to Alabama, and then we learn who Jahmyr Gibbs was because I didn't know Jahmyr Gibbs, the Georgia Tech version, but I learned about the Alabama version before he got drafted number 12 overall by the Detroit Lions. So it was.
I knew the Georgia Tech version because it was a big deal, and they're like, "Oh, this is the next Reggie Bush." Like that's what they were saying. And I watched the game. And I'm like, "Yeah, Reggie Bush, that's a stretch." I watched Reggie Bush live, but you see that dynamic ability. And his ability to catch the ball, run the ball, and you can kind of draw those parallels. But it only, not in the moment, it didn't help Jordan Mason, but obviously going to the 49ers and him getting in the position to be an undrafted back, and we're like, this is why 49ers don't draft running backs high. You shouldn't do that because you always like the later guy better. Mm-hmm. And we've seen Jordan Mason just kind of continue to climb up that roster. Here's a question for you: would Jordan Mason be the guy starting right now if Elijah Mitchell was healthy?
Oh, see, I don't know. Would Elijah Mitchell have gotten 28 carries if he was healthy in this game? He might have.
I think so.
He might have. And he's looked really good when he's healthy. Would he have lasted 28 carries is the question with Elijah Mitchell. Unfortunately, that's the way his career has gone. But he's on IR, and Jordan Mason's a pure runner. He's a really good player. And Jordan Mason wouldn't have gone undrafted if Jahmyr Gibbs would have just chosen Alabama out of high school instead of going to Georgia Tech and taking Jordan Mason's job. So a really good job by the 49ers scouting staff and the coaches and everybody involved for finding him and unearthing him and realizing he was really good and bringing him in as an undrafted free agent. Now getting his first NFL start and making really good on that. And so that was really fun to watch because I knew this was in him and he could possibly do this if he got the opportunity. And with Christian McCaffrey back there, he was not going to get the opportunity. So it was really fun to see. And wonder if it was eye-opening enough for Kyle Shanahan to realize that maybe, maybe all the wear and tear and all the carries and touches that Christian McCaffrey got in years past added to where he's at right now. And it's like, Kyle, if you would have just given the ball to Jordan Mason a few more times last year, maybe Christian McCaffrey doesn't get hurt. Like, I don't want to put that all on Kyle Shanahan. I don't know how that would have gone for Christian McCaffrey, but you've got multiple guys that can tote the rock. And even in this one, it was like, put Garendo in. Let's go see Patrick Taylor. You don't have to give Jordan Mason 30 carries, 28 carries, right? You got the game pretty sealed up. And they finally did put Garendo on the field. Then they called a timeout, and then he wasn't on the field again the next time.
Well, here's my issue, right? We're talking about all the handoffs that Jordan Mason got with his carries, and then if it wasn't him, it's like, oh, let's expose Deebo Samuel to just more hits.
Yeah,
right. Like potentially getting him banged up. And one time he got up a little slow, and I'm like, get up, Deebo. But I look on the sideline, and I'm like, who's that number 32? That's a good looking fella. Like, yeah. I think that's the Patrick guy. Like, like give him the ball. He's standing right next to you. Like, you don't have to use Deebo Samuel. Especially if you're not, I could see if it's, we don't trust Patrick Turner? Was it
Patrick Taylor.
Taylor?
Yeah.
We don't trust Patrick Taylor in pass pro. Well, you're not using Debo in pass pro either. So whatever plays you're giving Debo Samuel to run the ball in the backfield, give him to a running back, and maybe that will help kind of prolong Debo Samuel, who, I don't know, gets banged up. I feel like dang near every game he plays in. He takes a physical hit. It's his shoulder. It's this, it's that. Let's limit those hits. And those are the things when Kyle Shanahan, great offensive mind. There's some weird things. He had like a weird kind of time of possession thing before the half. I'm pretty sure we'll touch on that. But, hey, let's be a little bit smarter with the health of some of these guys, and Debo Samuel being a very important piece to this offense. You know, we talked about Christian McCaffrey playing without him. Okay, you go to Jordan Mason, you're going to still get really good production. You take Debo Samuel away, the passing game and the offense, it starts to get a little weird because you can't replicate what he brings to the offense.
You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. The Packers opened as 3.5 or 4-point favorites, depending on when you looked at it. They're now 3.5-point underdogs, thanks to the injury to Jordan Love. Malik Willis in, Jordan Love out, although Matt LaFleur left the door open a little bit that he could play, so you might be able to find some value there. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And the latest on Puka Nacua.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast.
In our second segment, we're going to talk about the injuries, but let's talk about some of the biggest positives from this one. I think right at the top, you got to talk about Cooper Kupp. The Cooper Kupp Revenge Tour is underway. It is the closest we've seen to 2021 Triple Crown Super Cup in a long, long time. 14 catches for 110 yards. The touchdown had the beautiful catch in the fourth quarter down the left sideline, dragging both of his feet in.
Unreal.
And I think for me, it was just how they used Cooper Kupp in this one. Next Gen, they dropped some stats after the game, and they tweeted this out. Cooper Kupp had 42 snaps and 12 touches in motion in week 1, the most by any player in a game over the last 7 seasons. Kupp was in motion at the snap on 30 plays, 6 more than any player in a game over that span. And he traveled 436 yards in pre-snap motion, the second most in a game by any player since 2018. So there was clearly a concerted effort to get Kupp back to where he was. And when Puka Nacua left the game, he was eaten. And it was a great sight to see for Rams fans.
Yeah, I think you bring up the two most important things. Number one, he looked like Cooper Kupp all over again. That's really exciting. We had not really seen a whole lot of that over the last couple of years, so he looked terrific. That's number one. Number two is, was this because Puka was unavailable? Was this because all of a sudden Matthew Stafford went back to what he knows best, the guy that he trusts the most? Or is it both of those things together at the same time? I tend to think that it's probably the third option, that all of those things coming together, because what that reminded me a lot of, D-Mac, especially in the second half, was the fourth quarter in the Super Bowl when they beat the Bengals, which was basically, we're just going to throw it to him every time. You do whatever it is you need to do. We're going to try to do what we're going to do. We're going to throw it to him, and it worked. And everybody inside of Ford Field knew it was going to Cooper Kupp. Matthew Stafford knew it. Kupp knew it. The Lions defenders knew it. And they still really didn't have an answer for it. And then when you needed a big play from a Tyler Johnson or from a Demarcus Robinson, they were able to kind of step in and fill that void as well. So hopefully, and, knocking on wood right here, that Puka comes back and can be as effective as he can be. But you get both of those guys cranked up. It was terrific to see Cooper Kupp look like Cooper Kupp for the first time in a while. He was just an A+ last night.
Yeah, and absolutely that's true. I mean, with Puka Nacua out, he was getting most of the targets.
Yep.
I mean, 49 pass attempts from Stafford, 29 of those targets were to Cooper Kupp. And I think the thing, though, it was that it wasn't just the short intermediate routes, which definitely that was the go-to. You did see some longer ones. I mean, the toe tap one was 20 yards. And I think you see a couple rushers in there, too, where he was using that capacity as well. And really the big takeaway is that if you do have to lose Puka Nacua for a couple of weeks, if he goes on the IR, whatever the case may be, that version of Cooper Kupp can carry a big-time workload. And if it's just for 4 weeks until he gets back, then that's totally okay. And with the flashes we saw from Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson, it definitely doesn't seem like, okay, the season's over if Puka has to miss any time.
No, they have some depth at that position that feels meaningful, right? Tyler Johnson looked really good. We saw Kobe Parkinson catch some passes and be a part of what they did offensively as well. You mentioned Whittington had a moment that it felt like he was going to get his first touchdown. Obviously, it got called back because of that penalty. Really, the only one who didn't contribute at all is Tutu Atwell. Again, why is he on this team? I'd very much like an explanation as to what role he fills here, because I just don't see it at all. But they can survive for a while without Puka. They're going to need Puka back if they're going to go where we'd all like to see them go. But Puka's this injury is a big deal because, again, he was hurt throughout camp. We were told he would be ready to go, and he made it a half before he was down again. And it is very, very concerning that you couldn't even get through the first half of the first game without him going down.
Also, too, hey, welcome to the NFL, Mr. Terrion Arnold of the Detroit Lions, going up against Cooper Kupp and leading to 2 pass interference calls in the end zone that puts them right up towards the goal line. So, yeah, I mean, that was great to see. The way he was moving, the way his body looked, it's just about health for Cooper Kupp. So the people out there saying Kupp was washed, hey, you guys try to write him off, he's not writing back. I'll tell you that much. Now, let's talk about Puka Nacua real quick, though, as far as the injury update, because nothing that substantial yet. They're doing testing today, but Rappaport tweet out, he's going to have tests this afternoon just to determine what is going on there in his knee. No firm word yet on his status, but obviously same knee as training camp, clearly in some pain that he was battling through. Wouldn't be surprised if he misses some time as he figures out and tries to improve this issue. So my takeaway on this is, well, one, that it's the same knee. It's the same knee. We know Puka has dealt with injuries throughout his career. That's one of the reasons why he was the 4th pick for the Rams in the 5th round and why he dropped that far. But hopefully this is nothing serious. It didn't appear to be. He was on the card. He also did return for at least a play after he initially injured that knee as well. But we know they're going to proceed with caution when it comes to an injury to one of their premier players.
I want to go back, and I'm sorry that I was right about this, but this is why every time somebody says, "Oh, he's fine, he's just not practicing," they're not fine, or they would be practicing. Rob Havenstein, oh, it's fine, we're just going to take a little time. He didn't play either. If guys don't practice, it matters. No matter what they say, no matter how often, oh, it's not that big of a deal, because you saw this happen in a half where all of a sudden one of your most important guys in Nacua is down again. The way that he plays so physically. He's such a tough football player. He's not a guy that's running out of bounds. He's fighting for extra yardage. He's going to take some hits. He's going to take some licks. This is just kind of the guy that he's going to be in this league, I think, unfortunately. The question you keep coming back to is, how much time could he miss? How much time will he miss? And when he comes back, is he at his best, or is he a lesser version then? We'll see. But this lasted a half. This goes back to, this wasn't just a big hit or he got tackled. It's like, okay, that could happen. This has been something that's been lingering throughout camp. There's a reason he wasn't a participant in a good chunk of this, and it flared up right away. You can kind of bat it aside and say, we'll see what it is, but this has been an issue before the season even started, and it's something that should have Rams fans' full attention, for sure.
Yeah, and if you look at the play, he left the game in the second quarter after the injury, just kind of banged his knee there on the turf. It wasn't like there was any video of a big turn or a pop or anything like that. So I know Puka Nacua fantasy owners were falling to their knees and their heart was sinking watching this one. But yeah, as you point out, I mean, he injured this knee in the Rams joint practice with the Chargers earlier this summer, but it does look like he's not fully recovered from it. I think when you look at this team's goals, look, they know what a successful season is for them. And it's not winning 9 or 10 games like last season and be an overachieving team. It's winning a playoff game, make it to the NFC Championship game, and being kind of one of the second-tier teams to possibly make it to the Super Bowl, right? We know that this team has those lofty goals and expectations for themselves. So I think considering that, you have to do what's right for Puka Nacua and try to make sure that when he comes back, he stays back. And look, I think that one thing that's great about this team as far as receivers go and everyone really related is the next man up mentality we saw in this game. And one of the big standouts to me, Tyler Johnson, one of the biggest plays of the night. If the Rams won, we'll be talking all about Tyler Johnson's 63-yard catch and run, filling in for Puka Nacua. He also finished the game with 7 targets, made 5 catches, and had 79 yards receiving. So really like what I saw from Tyler Johnson. I think, like we said before, if you get this version of Cooper Kupp, I'm confident in DeMarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson. So number one priority is don't rush Puka back, get him 100% healthy, and this Rams offense is going to be just fine.
Yeah, look, you'd miss Puka a lot. He's a terrific player, and you want to get him back as quickly and as healthy as possible. But I agree with you, D-Mac. This is a position that at least I think you can keep your head above water for a period of time without him. The offensive line, I think, is a much different story because you've had so many guys drop so quickly. I know that we can talk about that coming up in just a little bit, but the Nacua injury is a big deal. I'm not trying to minimize it, but I think they have options beyond Puka that can at least keep them in some games along the way. The offensive line could be a very different story.
Okay, Malik Willis is probably going to start for the Green Bay Packers in week 2. So
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast.
Tyler, let's get into Malik Willis because he came to Tennessee. And I think at the time when they brought him in, there was some excitement over what he could become. Let's just start there. What were the early returns such that you can remember them, understanding that, you know, what has happened since colors our memory of these things in a lot of ways?
For sure. Well, I mean, at least the initial reaction for me was I was excited about the Malik Willis pick. I mean, obviously, looking back now, we know that it should have never been this way, but some people were talking about Malik Willis being an early first-round pick because of the talent that he has. I mean, we've seen, I'm sure you've talked about some of these things. That throw that he made on the sideline early in the preseason was, I mean, that's electric arm talent. He really does have all the arm strength that you need. I've seen accurate throws from Malik Willis at times like that, where he's literally dotting wide receivers' hands on the sideline. Obviously, the running ability, there was some conversation that, hey, could Malik Willis play running back in the NFL? I think that's probably a little bit overstated, but he definitely has some really good mobility and some really good ability in the run game. I would imagine that Matt LaFleur is going to incorporate some design QB run here. That's the only logical thing to do. So just early on looking at him, you knew that he would take some time. You knew it was a development project, but just the raw talent and the raw ability he had absolutely had Titans fans excited. For at the time, Ryan Tannehill was entrenched as the starter. No Will Levis on the team yet. So you're thinking, all right, give Malik Willis a couple of years to develop and you might have something here because the talent that you see does pop off the screen.
What are the chances that Malik Willis was just not given the tools that he needed to succeed, particularly early on when it seemed like in some of the first action that he saw, Mike Vrabel was just petrified of letting him do anything?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I don't think that you can say it's all on the Titans for not giving him a good.
No. I'm not suggesting that either. I'm not suggesting that either.
Just, there are some Titans fans who say that Malik Willis was given nothing to develop. So it's not necessarily I'm saying you're saying that, but those are conversations. But I think it is somewhere in the middle because the reality is we can all sit here and acknowledge a Mike Vrabel team is not a great offensive environment. That's cut and dry. I don't think you got to be any kind of expert to say that. 3 out of the 6 years Vrabel was the head coach, they scored 17 points or less. So the offensive coaching, the offensive development, the offensive environment that Malik Willis was in is absolutely the polar opposite of quarterback development land compared to, think about the Packers. The Packers get the absolute best out of their young offensive linemen. They've developed Jordan Love. It would not be a stretch to say that Malik Willis is in a polar opposite environment comparing the Mike Vrabel environment for a young quarterback compared to where he's at now. Now, Malik Willis has his own part in this that he has to fulfill his duties here. But when you're talking about an environment, I don't think that it would be a stretch to say that Malik Willis was in one of the worst environments in the NFL to develop a young quarterback. And you add in how much development Malik Willis needed, and it's no wonder that he's where he's at right now. And I'll say this, Malik Willis made incredible strides from where he was under Mike Vrabel just in the one off season that he had with Brian Callahan. And Callahan is known as a quarterback guy. So while I think that Malik has it's like you could say Malik Willis has improved, but if we went from a 1 to a 2, that's improvement. But Jordan Love is a 7 or an 8. You know what I mean? Like, it's still a big gap, but I think Malik Willis has improved with better quarterback tutelage and with even a better situation maybe in Green Bay. I think it stands to reason that he could get even better, and he's a guy who could take big jumps really fast by getting better coaching than he's ever had before.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the thought when the Packers brought him in, like, hey, let's get him into our system. Let's put him with our coaches, with Tom Clements, who made huge strides with Jordan Love, and see what this guy can be in a year. You know, they didn't think they were going to have to play him in week 2, of course. And so this is fast tracking his development a little bit in that way. I went back and watched some of the 2018 tape, some of the tape I watched in 2019 of the Matt LaFleur offense in Tennessee with Marcus Mariota. And I felt like, hey, there's a lot of stuff here that is translatable to what the Packers could try and put together with Malik Willis, which is just another way of saying this is in the Matt LaFleur offense. This could be potentially baked in with the quarterback run game and even adding some of the layers in the preseason. We saw Malik Willis running like these quarterback sweeps, quarterback lead plays where you see him on the edge. He is a dynamic runner. Because you got to see the Matt LaFleur experience up close even before I did. Do you see what I see where there is carryover in what they did with Marcus Mariota and then to a lesser extent Blaine Gabbert and what they could potentially think about doing with Malik Willis?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially if you want to get heavy play action, get him out onto the perimeter, give him some of those bootlegs where he does have that option of, hey, I could toss this 5-yarder or I could just do what I do best and run. I feel like back to the Mike Vrabel thing. Mike Vrabel one time took him out of a preseason game early because he ran instead of throwing a pass. I think Green Bay is going to be like, if you want to run. Like, there's no, like, just play. You know what I mean? That's the best way to get Malik Willis to lead you to a couple of victories until Jordan Love can get back. I just let him go out there and play and getting him onto the perimeter with that heavy play action, getting some of those bootlegs in, and then incorporating some of that quarterback design run, which, again, Matt LaFleur has that in the bag. I mean, you don't want to do that with Jordan Love as much as you want to do it with Malik Willis, but it's there and it's within the design of the offense. I don't think that Matt LaFleur would have gone out and traded for Malik Willis to be the backup quarterback if he didn't know in the back of his mind, hey, if we got to play him, I got a plan for how to do this. So I think with what we've seen, like you said, from LaFleur in 2018 with Marcus Mariota, who was an athletic quarterback, into the idea to trade for Malik Willis, into now being with LaFleur, I think they absolutely will have an offense designed to help him, and that'll be getting him out on the perimeter, getting him clean pockets, a little max protect off the play action so we can clearly see things. I think that Matt LaFleur will put together a better plan than Malik Willis has ever had going into a game.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the case for if you believe that the Packers can make this work, it's because of what Matt LaFleur can do, and then you believe in the talent of Malik Willis, which it seems like most people do. The question is, can he draw within the lines enough? Or is it going to look like, my 15-month-old, coloring all over the piece of paper? And that's not even a shot at Malik Willis. He may just like, he's been in Green Bay for 4.5 minutes, like trying to get him to be on the same page with everyone else is going to take some time. I have to ask you, the elephant in the room is Mason Rudolph. This is a quarterback that we've seen be bad in the NFL, and Malik Willis could not beat him out. What happened there?
Well, I got to push back a little, Pete. I wouldn't say Mason Rudolph is 8-4-1, led the Steelers to a couple of victories.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that,
it's some 13-10 games that they were playing where TJ Watt gets 4 fumble recoveries and 18 sacks in the game.
Well, you say that, but that's what the Packers are going to have to do with Malik Willis. They're going to have to win that way. Right. And if they win, you're going to be like, good job, everybody.
Yeah,
like Malik got it done. Yeah. Listen, Malik does have his areas of concern. He pats the ball a lot, Pete. Watch, like right before he throws, he'll take an extra hitch and pat the ball. And his timing is not
quite decisive.
Yes, he's not decisive enough. He isn't clear with what he's seeing. He has a tendency to hesitate a little bit to make throws. And you do that in the NFL, you're going to throw picks. You're going to have balls batted up in the air. And I think that is his major concern, is seeing things and just letting it rip. He was a bit too hesitant as a Titan. But again, you come from Liberty, then you go into a Mike Vrabel offense. you probably aren't going to see things very clearly at the NFL level at that point. So if he can get over that hesitancy and just let it rip, just throw the ball when it's open, then I think the Packers will have a chance to win some of these games until Love is back.
You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. The Packers opened as 3.5 or 4-point favorites, depending on when you looked at it. They're now 3.5-point underdogs, thanks to the injury to Jordan Love. Malik Willis in, Jordan Love out, although Matt LaFleur left the door open a little bit that he could play, so you might be able to find some value there. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's Tiger time, and your wide receiver one might just be there for it.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
The news of the day, Andy Reid came out, talked to the media, and let us know, number one, no new injuries from the ballgame. Perfect news in my book, and honestly something that I was a little bit trepidatious about. We can get into that in a second. The biggest news is that Hollywood Brown may be able, potentially, to get involved in practice this week, maybe even towards the game against the Bengals. I'm not going to hold my breath because I don't want him to rush it. Personally, with that particular injury, I think, although he is thicker than he was when he was drafted, it's not something that a smaller, slighter wide receiver can recover from as easily as a guy who's beefed up like Tyreek is, even though the timeline has been very similar. So if he doesn't play, I'm not gonna cry. But it's a serious possibility that Hollywood Brown is good to go. What do you read of it?
I think it's a great sign. I think that you look at this and what it's going to mean for this team and for this offense. And we're going to talk about Mahomes here a little bit later. And I think Brown plays a huge factor into how this offense is going to go, obviously, being probably wide receiver one, although I'm not so sure he is. Rashee Rice might be that guy with the game we saw from him the other nights. But I think Hollywood's going to bring a lot of value to this team. You look at what it's going to mean. He's going to give you another guy that can take the top off the defense other than Xavier Worthy. And one of the other things that I saw that really impressed me looking back at the stats, Worthy was out there. The top 3 snap receivers, so to speak, Travis Kelce at just over 85%, I believe. Rashee Rice was right around 85%. And Worthy was at 75% of the passing snaps. I actually tracked that specifically to know, okay, I think they had 33 passing snaps and Worthy was out there for 75% of those. That is huge. If you go back and look, Rashee Rice was out there for 25%. So it's going to change with Hollywood coming. I would say all that. It's going to change with Hollywood coming back a little bit, obviously, but it shows how far Worthy is compared to where Rice was, at least offensively from the Chiefs' perspective. And you add Worthy into the mix of you add Hollywood into the mix of Worthy and Rice and Kelce, and I think that you're going to have a lot of fun on this offense. And I think that putting up points is not going to be an issue.
You hit on one point that was my initial reaction too, is at that workload. And yes, Rashee Rice was the target monster, was the yardage monster, and so clearly a focus, right? But Worthy was the explosive monster, right? Yep. You have to have different roles here. You're going to have different aspects of the game. For him to be at that level, to be on the field that much and have that much going through his head of the playbook, that's been a limitation in the past for a lot of wide receivers. For him to be at that point in week one, despite, remember, sitting out of OTAs, a significant volume of snaps that usually happen for a rookie, he was not able to attain. He had to go mental reps. That's a huge step forward. And I think something that can lead towards not just more overall production, but a guy that's there in the postseason when everything gets ramped up again and is able to contribute much as Rashee Rice was last year, maybe even more.
Well, and it's funny because we're going to talk another, in the next segment about another Chiefs rookie in Suamataia that is exceeding expectations in a lot of ways because the Chiefs don't use their rookies quite like they have in years. I mean, you talk about wide receivers, you make a fantastic point. Rashee Rice, you go back 25% of snaps last year against Detroit and go back and look at who their wide receivers were. It's not like they had good wide receivers at the time. We're talking 25%, and he still should have probably been wide receiver 2 or 3 in that game. But they just didn't trust him to be where he needed to be and be in the offense involved as early as he is. You add Brown to this whole mix, and it just completely changes things. And the thing that I'm the most excited about is, and I'm sure Brown was probably there on the sideline, or he's watching the film with Worthy afterwards. But I'm excited for him to be on the field with Worthy and to be on the sideline with Worthy specifically, not to take anything away from the coaches, but to have a guy that is basically essentially the same skill set to an extent, be able to see exactly what you're seeing and be able to tell you, okay, this is what I saw. This is maybe what you need to tweak the next route for this specific type of play or this scenario. That will change how quickly Worthy can get acclimated and really help this offense. And that's kind of funny to say because he scored 2 touchdowns on Thursday night's game. And Brown is going to have a big impact himself as a wide receiver, not to mention the coaching factor.
Right. How much more acclimating does he really have to do? Well, there's room to improve.
You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. The Packers opened as 3.5 or 4-point favorites, depending on when you looked at it. They're now 3.5-point underdogs, thanks to the injury to Jordan Love. Malik Willis in, Jordan Love out, although Matt LaFleur left the door open a little bit that he could play, so you might be able to find some value there. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So transitioning away from a fun Monday night football game, even if it wasn't competitive all the way until the end, transitioning away, we got to talk about some teams that did not win in week 1, but still seem like they're going to have a chance to be contenders. And we got to start with the Green Bay Packers. So on Monday, Matt LaFleur announced that Malik Willis would be the starter for the Green Bay Packers if Jordan Love couldn't go. And that's been a conversation, obviously, since Jordan Love got hurt on Friday night in Brazil. We're going to hear from Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers on that situation.
After Packer fans held their breath all day Saturday, we got word on the Jordan Love injury. It is an MCL, and we still don't know exactly what the timeline is going to be. 3 to 6 weeks is the early word, with reports that the Packers believe Jordan Love could come back in the earlier time frame of that window. 3 weeks would be Minnesota Vikings in week 4. Could Jordan Love practice that week? Could he not? That is still to be determined. The question now for the Packers is, do they have the right quarterbacks in this room, whether it's Malik Willis as QB2 or Sean Clifford on the practice squad, to get them to where they want to go over the next month or so? Can they right the ship a little bit? Can they play 500 football over the next 4 games if they have to give Love a shot with a 500 team to then go make a playoff push? My answer to that question is no. They need to go get someone like Ryan Tannehill. Will the Packers agree? Do you agree? Let me know.
Well, it looks like the Packers don't agree. And I got to tell you, Keith, I think it's a big mistake. I think the Packers have really botched their backup quarterback situation here. And I would say 3 strikes and you're out. They have Sean Clifford. They don't like Sean Clifford. They try to get somebody new. They draft Michael Pratt. Well, Michael Pratt is so bad that they cut him from the roster, and they cut Sean Clifford too because he's so bad, and they trade for Malik Willis. And look, Malik Willis has a lot of talent, but I've watched Malik Willis personally for the last 2 years, and asking him to go into a game and actually win you an NFL game or 3 weeks worth of games or 4 weeks worth of games or to keep this Green Bay Packers thing afloat after they go 0-1, Malik Willis, I do not believe is capable of that. So to me, Sean Clifford, Michael Pratt, Malik Willis, 3 strikes, you are out, Green Bay Packers. Quit trying to believe that you have the answers. They need to go get Ryan Tannehill if they want to keep this thing afloat. Now, I don't think that Ryan Tannehill would want them because Tannehill is going to want something more long-term than 4 to 6 weeks, and then Jordan Love's back, and then what? I'm the backup in Green Bay when I could be with my family in the Bahamas? Not a chance. So I think that they missed a chance to get a Gardner Minshew or a better backup. They could have got a Joe Flacco as a backup for them. There were other options, even Mason Rudolph in Tennessee, who the Titans kept over Malik Willis, I think would be a better quarterback for this situation the Packers are in right now, needing to just stem the tide and maybe get 2 wins in 4 weeks so Jordan Love can get back. I don't believe that they're in a situation where they can get those wins right now. And again, 3 strikes and you're out. Green Bay had 3 chances at fixing the backup spot, and they blew them all. And now I think they might be too far behind in the NFC. They're 0-1. Talk about can they come back? I don't think Green Bay will be able to come back after the losses they sustained before Love comes back.
Well, yeah, I think this part is true that they botched the backup quarterback situation, right? But is their season done? I would have to say no. And the reason is this, that they've spent a lot of draft capital over the past few years, on that defense, right? And we know one thing, that defense and run game can get you out of a couple games, right? You get there, you punch a couple teams in the mouth, you can squeak out a 17-15 type game, right? You know who they need to ask? The Chicago Bears, right? I think they had 150 yards total offense, and they walked out of there with the win. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with that part of it, right? So I think that's the part. And I think this, Malik Willis, you activate his legs, right? You don't ask him to do things that he cannot do. And one benefit is that there's not a lot of game film out there for him. And to address the Ryan Tannehill part, I'll say this. Beggars can't be choosy, right? It's not like Ryan Tannehill is necessarily Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, where we're calling him out of the Fox, sportscasting box. Peyton Manning, he's with Bill Belichick breaking down film on ESPN. It's like, look, you still have an opportunity to kind of lay your legacy, right? And who knows if Jordan Love's situation is going to be 3 weeks or 6 weeks, or who knows, and I hate to wish this on him, right? But there are also possible re-injuries, right? Because anytime you talk about an ACL, MCL, PCL, any CL, I'm kind of out, right? I'm a little bit nervous about that. So I'll lean on the side of this. I agree with you 100%. That the Packers botched this situation. They said we were going to pay our young quarterback, and they were full gas right on Jordan Love. But you cannot do that. This is football. You live down in and down out. So they should have addressed the backup situation. But Matt LaFleur, the general manager, ownership over there, they have a little bit of wiggle room where they can figure this thing out.
Yeah, well, Green Bay, that's the thing. You can't really hammer Green Bay on much because they get pretty much all of it right. But I just don't think that they got this one particularly right. One thing I will say for Malik Willis, I talked to Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers about this. The next 2 games for the Packers are the Colts and then the Titans. Well, if Malik Willis knows 2 teams in the NFL, he knows the Colts and the Titans. So there's at least that for the Packers. But a team I actually believe is still a contender despite losing in week 1 is the Baltimore Ravens, and I am not the only one who believes it. Kevin Allstriker from Locked On Ravens has something to say.
The AFC North. Right, the Ravens lose to Kansas City in week 1, 27-20, opening night of the season. Does not mean the AFC North does not still belong to the Baltimore Ravens. It absolutely does, and that's how people should be thinking right now, because after what we saw yesterday, Pittsburgh Steelers, Cincinnati Bengals, Cleveland Browns, there's still no doubt in my mind that I personally believe the Ravens are in a pretty good spot to win this division. And right now they're not in the lead. Pittsburgh did beat Atlanta yesterday, so they are technically in the division lead. So it's Pittsburgh 1-0, and then Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Cleveland 0-1. But out of all the performances we saw, I'm still the most confident in Baltimore winning the division, and it's not particularly close.
I agree with Kevin. I think that the Ravens played better football while losing to the Chiefs than the Steelers did while winning over the Falcons. The Steelers kicked, 6 field goals? It was 18-10. They kicked 6 field goals. That was just a classic Steelers game of we're dragging you down in the mud. We're bringing you into the phone booth and we're boxing with you and you're not getting out of our grasp. I mean, maybe I'm stepping out of line here, Keith, but I don't know anybody who would say right now, despite the 1-0 for the Steelers, the 0-1 for the Ravens, that they believe in the Steelers more than the Ravens. I think that the real story is the Bengals and the Browns, who both were expected to be competitive teams, look completely out of sorts, and they're probably going to turn that around and play better football. But the Ravens didn't lose a lot of ground here, especially losing to the Chiefs, who are going to beat a lot of teams this year anyway. Like, I still fully believe that the Ravens are winning that division. Do you disagree?
No, I do not disagree. I agree with you, right? I mean, we're right on par with this. The AFC North is for the Ravens to take, and we've seen this, right? We watched the Cleveland Browns, and we sat there and we watched them and said, you know what? This was about on par, right? For the Cleveland Browns, what we expected with the situation with Deshaun Watson, right? Then you know what caught us off guard was the Cincinnati Bengals, right? And you talk about post-game, some of the comments, some of the things that were said, it just looked out of sorts. And you wonder if all of the training camp stuff is starting to bleed into the regular season, right? And people wonder why training camp and preseason matters. It's so you don't go up to New England and lose that football game. And that's a big time game, right? So I'm with you. I think the Baltimore Ravens are in a prime situation. Do they have to figure out this passing attack? Should they be on the market trying to find some veteran free agent that's at home to add to this wide receiver room? Of course, but guess what? They can run the football. Lamar Jackson can will them to 11 wins by himself.
You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. The Packers opened as 3.5 or 4-point favorites, depending on when you looked at it. They're now 3.5-point underdogs, thanks to the injury to Jordan Love. Malik Willis in, Jordan Love out, although Matt LaFleur left the door open a little bit that he could play, so you might be able to find some value there. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How will Jalen Lucas's injury impact Florida State's offense?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles.
So, Jalen Lucas, it's been announced he is out. He was one of the few playmakers that had shown out so far for the Noles. Didn't have a ton of touches, but he's a guy that obviously electric. He is done for the season. It was announced on Monday. Now, I've been thinking about this, and I mentioned it in yesterday's show, just in passing, that he was injured. But I wanted to put together a plan on, okay, how does this really impact the Noles? In today's show, we're going to talk about the rushing game and how this is not what you want because it actually hinders the rushing game. You know, he doesn't run the ball a lot himself, and how Florida State has to adjust with some players. Then we're going to talk about Norvell a little bit and then finish up with attacking the Memphis defense. They better have a really good game plan, and that's kind of why I'm starting off with Lucas. So here's the baseline of this. If you take nothing else away from this show, note that the Noles coming into this game, 0-2, are averaging, you ready for this? This is yards per carry as a team. 2.53 yards per carry. 2.53. Losing any player offensively is not good. You know, you don't want the young man to be injured first and foremost, but as a unit, when you lose a guy with the lateral cutting ability, the ability to dart and dodge, to accelerate and break through a tackle, the way that Jalen can, and his ability to catch the football, to be in the slot, to be a jet sweep guy, that impacts the offense in numerous ways. His stats really aren't like overwhelming. I mean, I could read them off, but he is a part of the offense, and he's what they're trying to do. He's Jakai's brother, younger brother. Ja'Kai Douglas, obviously a slot for the Noles. I'm interested to see how Florida State adjusts in terms of the personnel. That got Mekhi Danzy's moved up off scout team to the running back room and is practicing with the normal offense, getting some reps in practice. Norvell confirmed that. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I think Florida State has a lot of questions to ask. And there's not just one answer here on what to do because the offense is struggling, and that's being kind, to put it mildly. Again, 2.53 yards carry. Come on. That's a joke. It's one of the lowest averages in all of college football. Matter of fact, I'll share my screen just to show everybody. This is from CFB Stats. Really good site. It's one of my favorite sites. If you do not use it, you should. To put it mildly, it is a tremendous site. So here are the numbers for the Noles, and I mean, it's just pedestrian. Rodell's 15 carries for 48 yards. In 2 games, you don't have a running back over 50 yards. He's at 3.2, and he does have a touchdown. He's averaging 7.5 totes per game. Tofili has 9 carries in 2 games. I could be wrong, but I think there's something going on there. I just don't believe he's 100% healthy. Prove me wrong, but there's no way the guy that I was told was going to be the lead back this year is going to have 9 carries in 2 games. Zero chance I'm believing that. There's something off there. Whatever it is, there's some kind of problem, but that needs to be rectified post-haste. 9 carries, 37 yards, 4.1 yards per carry, and he does have a touchdown. Then you had Lucas. He's got 2 carries for 13 yards, 6.5. But again, his value is with the jet sweeps, the screens, where he lines up, making the defense counter to him because everybody knows how fast he is. Nobody wants to try to tackle that guy one-on-one. It's awful. Not having him in there impacts all these other guys who are already, by and large, struggling in some way, shape, or form. So Florida State is struggling there. Cam Davis, 4 carries, 11 yards. Keziah Holmes, 3 carries, 8 yards. DJ, this is a little misleading because sacks count against 14 carries and 2 yards. So they really do stink right now at running the football. And it's also accentuated by Byers. The right tackle is still banged up. Rob Scott's not very good. Jalen Early is a guy he's a redshirt sophomore from the New Orleans area. He's getting reps. He got some reps in the last game, but I try not to focus on players in the game at offensive line as much as how the unit's playing. And I know one guy can be a sieve. I get it. But he's a newer player. The fact that basically your third team right tackle is getting reps is a sign of where the offensive line is. It's regressed so much. It's insane. So that's also tied in. But if you look at the passing stats too, that's when it gets really funky. Florida State needs to run the football more effectively because not only are they going to try and be creative with the run game and be good, like last year, they're really good with it, considering the offensive line wasn't great. But, I mean, the receivers, I can share this too. It's not exactly friendly. I'm being ultra nice in saying that. They don't have a guy that's done anything spectacular. Jakai's pretty good so far, but like there's just no consistency, and that's a problem. It's a major problem, but it stems off this running game, and that's why I wanted to bring this up. Here's the passing stats for those of you on YouTube. Let's go over that just quickly. Ja'Kai Douglas, 8 catches, 121 yards, 15 yards catch. He's had, for a smaller guy, he's played well. I'll give him credit. But at the same time, you need outside guys to consistently getting open, and they're not. Kentron obviously had the 2 catches back-to-back in the score, 4 catches for 94 yards. There's nothing wrong with that, but he just needs more of it. Benson's been a little bit of a disappointment. Nothing down the field consistently. 7 catches, 72 yards. Rodell, 5 catches for 46 yards. There's a running back. They've always thrown to the backs. Ja'Kai, 3 catches for 39 yards, Jalen Lucas, 3 catches for 39 yards. Toafili's had quite a few checkdowns. He's done his job. 6 catches, 38 yards. Jalen Brown as a starter, 3 catches for 26. That's not getting it done. And the tight end room has been horrendous 1 catch for 12 yards. So this is why I bring up how important it is for Lucas to be in the game and for having everybody. You need continuity. You need the defense to respect what you have going on. Losing him is going to be interesting. Are they going to do less jet motion or more eye candy, just the shifts and stuff? I think they need to do more, but right now they're struggling with so many basic things. I'm not sure they can. It's a conundrum. Without being in practice, I don't really have an opinion on what's being done in practice to make it work, because you need to see it, like literally see it. No offense to Norvell and his staff, and they're not going to let us into practice during the season. You need to see it to understand how comfortable the players are. Body language is everything. How quickly do they assimilate to new plays, new formations? Check with me at the line. You do simulations against the first or second team, scout team, whatever. How well are they doing when they run complicated plays, meaning there's multiple shifts, a jet motion, the timing of the snap of the jet? All that stuff matters, because the worst thing, it's hilarious when it happens. Somebody snaps the ball, whatever team, doesn't be Florida State, and the jet motion's not cleared, and it hits the guy that's going in motion. That is a disaster. Those go viral on social media for all the wrong reasons. So Florida State, they've got a lot of things they got to fix with the run game, but losing Lucas, I think, is a problem. Here's a couple other things before we talk about Norvell and his comments at his press conference. Number one, they stink at running the ball on first down and didn't even try it against Boston College. First half, I don't believe they had a first down run. That's ridiculous. Somehow, some way against Memphis, Florida State's rushing attack must create explosives. Obviously, when you're averaging 2.53 yards per carry, there's not much of that going on. They got to figure that out, because there's no way you're going to tell me that DJ Uiagalelei or any quarterback will ultimately be successful, consistently so, with a running game that is pedestrian at best on a play, and most often is more like a broken down scooter. So that's a problem. They also have to work the middle of the field a little bit. And what I mean by that is the inside running game's got to be better